Marmion by Sir Walter Scott. Canto 2nd. The Convent. The breeze, which swept away the smoke round Norham Castle, rolled, when all the loud artillery spoke, with lightning flash and thunder stroke, as Marmion left the hold. It curled not Tweed alone, that breeze, for far upon Northumbrian seas it freshly blew, and strong, where, from high Whitby's cloistered pile, bound to St. Cuthbert's holy isle, it bore a bark along. Upon the gale she stooped her side, and bounded o'er the swelling tide, as she were dancing home. The merry seamen laughed to see their gallant ship so lustily furrow the green sea foam. Much joyed they in their honoured freight, for, on the deck, in chair of state, the abbess of St. Hilda placed, with 5 fair nuns the galley graced. 'Twas sweet to see those holy maids, like birds escaped to greenwood shades, their first flight from the cage. How timid, and how curious too, for all to them was strange and new, and all the common sights they view their wonderment engage. One eyed the shrouds and swelling sail with many a Benedictite. One at the rippling surge grew pale, and would for terror pray, then shrieked because the sea-dog nigh his round black head and sparkling eye reared o'er the foaming spray. And one would still adjust her veil, disordered by the summer gale, perchance lest some more worldly eye her dedicated charms might spy. Perchance because such action graced her fair turned arm and slender waist. Light was each simple bosom there, save 2, who ill might pleasure share, the abbess and the novice Clare. The abbess was of noble blood, but early took the veil and hood, ere upon life she cast a look, nor knew the world that she forsook. Fair too she was, and kind had been as she was fair, but ne'er had seen for her a timid lover sigh, nor knew the influence of her eye. Love, to her ear, was but a name, combined with vanity and shame. Her hopes, her fears, her joys, were all bounded within the cloister wall. The deadliest sin her mind could reach was of monastic rule the breach, and her ambition's highest aim to emulate St. Hilda's fame. For this she gave her ample dower to raise the convent's eastern tower. For this, with carving rare and quaint, she decked the chapel of the saint, and gave the relic shrine of cost with ivory and gems embossed. The poor her convent's bounty blessed, the pilgrim in its halls found rest. Black was her garb, her rigid rule reformed on Benedictine school. Her cheek was pale, her form was spare. Vigils and penitence austere had early quenched the light of youth. But gentle was the dame, in sooth. Though, vain of her religious sway, she loved to see her maids obey. Yet nothing stern was she in cell, and the nuns loved their abbess well. Sad was this voyage to the dame. Summoned to Lindisfarne she came, there with St. Cuthbert's abbot old, and Tynemouth's prioress, to hold a chapter of St. Benedict, for inquisition stern and strict, on 2 apostates of the faith, and if need were to doom to death. Naught say I here of Sister Clare, save this, that she was young and fair, as yet a novice unprofessed, lovely and gentle, but distressed. She was betrothed to one now dead, or worse, who had dishonored fled. Her kinsman bade her give her hand to one who loved her for her land. Herself, almost broken-hearted now, was bent to take the vestal vow, and shroud, within St. Hilda's gloom, her blasted hopes and withered bloom. She sat upon the galley's prow, and seemed to mark the waves below. Nay, seemed so fixed her looking eye to count them as they glided by. She saw them not. 'Twas seeming all far other scene her thoughts recall. A sun-scorched desert, waste and bare, nor waves nor breezes murmured there. There saw she where some careless hand o'er a dead corpse had heaped the sand, to hide it till the jackals come, to tear it from the scanty tomb. See what a woeful look was given, as she raised up her eyes to heaven. Lovely and gentle and distressed, these charms might tame the fiercest breast. Harpers have sung, and poets told, that he, in fury uncontrolled, the shaggy monarch of the wood, before aversion fair and good hath pacified his savage mood. But passions in the human frame oft put the lion's rage to shame, and jealousy, by dark intrigue, with sordid avarice in league, had practised with their bowl and knife against the mourner's harmless life. This crime was charged against those who lay prisoned in Cuthbert's islet grey. And now the vessel skirts the strand of mountainous Northumberland. Towns, towers, and halls successive rise, and catch the nuns' delighted eyes. Monk Wearmouth soon behind them lay, and Teignmouth's priory and bay they marked amid her trees, the hall of lofty Seton de Laval. They saw the Blythe and Wansbeck floods rush to the sea through sounding woods. They passed the tower of Winderton, mother of many a valiant son. At Coquet Isle their beads they tell to the good saint who owned the cell. Then did the Aulne attention calm, and Warkworth, proud of Percy's name, and next they cross themselves to hear the whitening breakers are sound so near. There, boiling through the rocks, they roar on Dunstanborough's cavern shore. Thy tower, proud Bamborough, marked they there, King Ida's castle, huge and square. From its tall rock looked grimly down, and on the swelling ocean frown. Then from the coast they bore away, and reached the holy island's bay. The tide did now its flood mark gain, and girdled in the saint's domain. For, with the flow and ebb, its style varies from continent to isle. Dry shod over sands, twice every day, the pilgrims to the shrine find way. Twice every day the waves efface of staves and sandaled feet the trace, as to the port the galley flew. Higher and higher rose the view, the castle within with its battled walls, the ancient monastery's halls, a solemn, huge, and dark red pile, placed on the margin of the isle. In Saxon strength, the abbey frowned with massive arches broad and round, that rose alternate row and row, on ponderous columns, short and low, built ere the art was known. By pointed aisle and shafted stalk, the arcades of an alleyed walk, to emulate in stone. On the deep walls, the heathen Dane had poured his impious rage in vain, and needful was such strength to these, exposed to the tempestuous seas, scourged by the wind's eternal sway, open to rovers fierce as they, which could 1,200 years withstand winds, waves, and northern pirates' hand. Not but the portions of the pile, rebuilded in a later style, showed where the spoiler's hand had been. Not but the wasting sea breeze keen had worn the pillars carving quaint, and mouldered in his niche the saint, and rounded with consuming power the pointed angles of each tower. Yet still entire the abbey stood, like veteran, worn, but unsubdued. Soon as they neared his turrets strong, the maidens raised St. Hilda's song, and with the sea wave and the wind their voices sweetly shrill combined, and made harmonious close. Then, answering from the sandy shore, half drowned amid the breakers' roar, a chording chorus rose. Down to the haven of the isle, the monks and nuns in order file, from Cuthbert's cloisters grim. Banner and cross and relics there, to meet St. Hilda's maids they bear, and as they caught the sounds on air, they echoed back the hymn. The islanders, in joyous mood, rushed emulously through the flood to hail the bark to land. Conspicuous by her veil and hood, signing the cross, the abbess stood and blessed them with her hand. Suppose we now the welcome said, suppose the convent banquet made, all through the holy dome, through cloister, aisle, and galley, wherever vestal maid might pry. No risk to meet unhallowed eye, the stranger sisters roam, till fell the evening damp with dew, and the sharp sea breeze coldly blew. From there, even summer night is chill. Then, having strayed and gazed their fill, they closed around the fire, and all in turn essayed to print the rival merits of their saint, a theme that ne'er can tire, a holy maid, for be it known that their saint's honor is their own. Then Whitby's nuns exulting told how to their house 3 barons bold must menial service do. while horns blow out a note of shame, and monks cry, "Fie upon your name!" In wrath for loss of sylvan game, St. Hilda's priest ye slew. 'Tis on Ascension Day each year, while laboring on our harbor pier, must Herbert, Bruce, and Percy hear. They told how in their convent cell a Saxon princess once did dwell, the lovely Edelfide, and how of 1,000 snakes each one was changed into a coil of stone when holy Hilda prayed. Themselves, within their holy bound, their stony folds had often found. They told how seafowls' pinions fail as over Whitby's towers they sail, and sinking down with flutterings faint, they do their homage to the saint. Nor did St. Cuthbert's daughters fail to vie with these in holy tale. His body's resting place of old, how oft their patron changed, they told, how, when the rude Dane burned their pile, the monks fled forth from Holy Isle, o'er northern mountain, marsh, and moor, from sea to sea, from shore to shore. 7 years St. Cuthbert's corpse they bore. They rested them in fair Melrose. But though alive, he loved it well. Not there his relics might repose. For wondrous tale to tell, in his stone coffin forth he rides, a ponderous bark for river tides, yet light as gossamer it glides downward to Teignmouth cell. Nor long was his abiding there, far southward did the saint repair. Chester Lee Street and Ripon saw his holy corpse, ere Wardlaw hailed him with joy and fear. And after many wanderings past, he chose his lordly seat at last, where his cathedral, huge and vast, looks down upon the Wear. There, deep in Durham's Gothic shade, his relics are in secret laid, but none may know the place, save of his holiest servants 3, deep sworn to solemn secrecy, who share that wondrous grace. Who may his miracles declare? Even Scotland's dauntless king and heir, although with them they led Glaswegians wild as ocean's gale, and loaded steeds all sheathed in mail, and the bold men of Teviotdale. Before his standard fled, 'twas he, to vindicate his reign, edged Alfred's falchion on the Dane, and turned the conqueror back again, when, with his Norman boyar band, he came to waste Northumberland. But fain St. Hilda's nuns would learn if, on a rock by Lindisfarne, St. Cuthbert sits and toils to frame the sea-born bees that bore his name. Such tales had Whitby's fishers told, and said they might his shape behold, and hear his anvil sound. A deadened clang, a huge dim form, seen, but, and heard, when gathering storm and night were closing round. But this, as tale of idle fame, the nuns of Lindisfarne disclaim. While round the fire such legends go, far different was the scene of woe, where in a secret aisle beneath council was held of life and death. It was more dark and lone that vault than the worst dungeon cell. Old Culwulf built it for his fault, in penitence to dwell, when he, for cowl and beads, laid down the Saxon battle axe and crown. This den, which, chilling every sense of feeling, hearing, sight, was called the Vault of Penitence, excluding air and light, was by the prelate Sexhel made a place of burial for such dead as, having died in mortal sin, might not be laid the church within. 'Twas now a place of punishment, whence, if so loud a shriek were sent as reached the upper air, the hearers blessed themselves and said, the spirits of the sinful dead bemoaned their torments there. But though, in the monastic pile, did of this penitential isle some vague tradition go, few only, save the abbot, knew where the place lay, and still more few were those who had from him the clue to that dread vault to go. Victim and executioner were blindfold when transported there. In dark low rounds the arches hung, from the rude rock the side walls sprung. The gravestones, rudely sculptured o'er, half sunk in earth by time, half war, were all the pavement on the floor. The mildew drops fell one by one, with tinkling plash upon the stone. A cresset in an iron chain, which served to light his drear domain, with damp and darkness seemed to strive, as if it scarce might keep alive, and yet it dimly served to show the awful conclave met below. There, met to doom in secrecy, were placed the heads of convents 3, all servants of Saint Benedict, the statues of whose order strict on iron table lay, in long black dress on seats of stone, behind where these 3 judges shone, by the pale cresset's ray. The abbess of St. Hilda's there sat for a space with visage bare, until, to hide her bosom's swell and teardrops that for pity fell, she closely drew her veil. Yon shrouded figure, as I guess, by her proud mane and flowing dress, is Teignmouth's haughty prioress, and she with awe looks pale. And he, that ancient man, whose sight has long been quenched by age's night, upon whose wrinkled brow alone nor ruth nor mercy's trace is shown, whose look is hard and stern, St. Cuthbert's abbot is his style, for sanctity called, through the aisle, the saint of Lindisfarne. Before them stood a guilty pair, but, though an equal fate they share, yet one alone deserves our care. Her sex a page's dress belied, the cloak and doublet, loosely tied, obscured her charms, but could not hide. Her cap down o'er her face she drew, and on her doublet breast she tried to hide the badge of blue, Lord Marmion's falcon crest. But at the prioress's command, a monk undid the silken band that tied her tresses fair, and raised the bonnet from her head, and down her slender form they spread in ringlets rich and rare. Constance de Beverley, they know, sister professed of Fontevraud, whom the church numbered with the dead, for broken vows, and convent fled. When thus her face was given to view, although so pallid was her hue, it did a ghastly contrast bear to those bright ringlets glistening fair. Her look composed and steady eye bespoke a matchless constancy, and there she stood so calm and pale that but her breathing did not fail, and motion slight of eye and head, and of her bosom warranted that neither sense nor pulse she lacks. You might have thought a form of wax, wrought to the very life, was there. So still she was, so pale, so fair. Her comrade was a sordid soul, such as does murder for a meed, who, but of fear, knows no control, because his conscience, seared and foul, feels not the import of his deed. One whose brute feeling ne'er inspires beyond his own more brute desires. Such tools the tempter ever needs to do the savagest of deeds. For them no visioned terrors daunt, their nights no fancied spectres haunt. One fear with them of all most base, the fear of death alone finds place. This wretch was clad in frock and cowl, and shame not loath to moan and howl, his body on the floor to dash, and crouch like a hound beneath the lash, while his mute partner, standing near, waited her doom without a tear. Yet well the luckless wretch might shriek, well might her paleness terror speak, for there were seen in that dark wall 2 niches, narrow, deep, and tall. Who enters at such grisly door shall ne'er, I ween, find exit more. In each a slender meal was laid of roots, of water, and of bread. By each, in Benedictine dress, 2 haggard monks stood motionless, who, holding high a blazing torch, showed the grim entrance of the porch. Reflecting back the smoky beam, the dark red walls and arches gleam. Hewn stoves and cement were displayed, and building tools in order laid. These executioners were chose as men who were with mankind foes, and with despite and envy fired into the cloister had retired, or who, in desperate doubt of grace, strove by deep penance to efface of some foul crime the stain. For, as the vassals of her will, such men the church selected still, as either joyed in doing ill, or thought more grace to gain. If, in her cause, they wrestled down feelings their nature strove to own, by strange device were they brought there, they knew not how, and knew not where. And now that blind old abbot rose to speak the chapter's doom. On those the wall was to enclose alive within the tomb, but stopped, because that woeful maid, gathering her powers to speak, essayed, Twice she essayed, and twice in vain, her accents might no utterance gain. Naught but imperfect members slip from her convulsed and quivering lip. Twixt each attempt all was so still, you seemed to hear a distant rill. 'Twas ocean's swells and falls. For though this vault of sin and fear was to the sounding surge so near, a tempest there you scarce could hear, so massive were the walls. At length, an effort sent apart the blood that curdled to her heart, and light came to her eye, and color dawned upon her cheek, a hectic and a fluttered streak, like that left on the Chevalier Peak by autumn's stormy sky. And when her silence broke at length, still as she spoke she gathered strength, and armed herself to bear. It was a fearful sight to see, such high resolve and constancy, in form so soft and fair. I speak not to implore your grace, well know I, for 1 minute's space successless might I sue. Nor do I speak your prayers to gain, for if a death of lingering pain to cleanse my sins be penance vain, vain are your masses too. I listened to a traitor's tale, I left the convent and the veil. For 3 long years I bowed my pride, a horseboy in his train to ride. And well my folly's meed he gave, who forfeited to be his slave. All here and all beyond the grave, he saw young Clara's face more fair. He knew her of broad lands, the air, forgot his vows, his faith forswore, and Constance was beloved no more. 'Tis an old tale, and often told, but did my fate and wish agree, ne'er had been read in story old, of maiden true betrayed for gold, that loved or was avenged like me. The king approved his favourite's aim, in vain a rival bared his claim, whose fate with Clare's was plight, for he attaints that rival's fame with treason's charge, and on they came, in mortal lists to fight. Their oaths are said, their prayers are prayed, their lances in the rest are laid. They meet in mortal shock, and hark, the throng with thundering cry shout, Marmion, Marmion, to the sky, De Wilton to the block. Say ye, who preach, heaven shall decide, when in the lists 2 champions ride. Say, was heaven's justice here? When loyal in his love and faith, Wilton found o'erthrow or death, beneath a traitor's spear. How false the charge, how true he fell, this guilty packet best can tell. Then drew a packet from her breast, paused, gathered voice, and spoke the rest. Still was false Marmion's bridal stayed, to Whitby's convent fled the maid, the hated match to shun. Ho! Shuffs thee thus? King Henry cried. Sir Marmion, she shall be thy bride, if she were sworn a nun. One way remained, the king's command sent Marmion to the Scottish land. I lingered here, and rescue planned for Clara and for me. This Caitlef monk for gold did swear he would go Whitby's shrine repair, and by his drugs my rival fair a saint in heaven should be. But ill the dastard kept his oath, whose cowardice has undone us both. And now my tongue the secret tells, not that remorse my bosom swells, but to assure my soul that none shall ever wed with Marmion. Had fortune my last hope betrayed, this packet to the king conveyed, had given him to the headsman's stroke, although my heart that instant broke. Now, men of death, work forth your will, for I can suffer and be still, and come he slow, or come he fast, it is but death who comes at last. Yet dread me from my living tomb, ye vassal slaves of bloody Rome. If Marmion's late remorse should wake, full soon such vengeance will he take, that you shall wish the fiery Dane had rather been your guest again. Behind, a dark hour sends, the altars quake, the crozier bends, the ire of a despotic king rides forth upon destruction's wing. Then shall these vaults, so strong and deep, burst open to the sea wind's sweep. Some traveller then shall find my bones whitening amid disjointed stones, and ignorant of priest's cruelty, marvel such relics here should be. Fixed was her look, and stern her air. Back from her shoulders streamed her hair. The locks that wont her brow to shade stared up erectly from her head. Her figure seemed to rise more high, Her voice, despair's wild energy, had given a tone of prophecy. Appalled, the astonished conclave sate. With stupid eyes, the men of fate gazed on the light-inspired form, and listened for the avenging storm. The judges felt the victim's dread. No hand was moved, no word was said, till thus the abbess doom was given, raising his sightless balls to heaven. Sister, let thy sorrows cease. Sinful brother, part in peace. From that dire dungeon, place of doom, of execution too, and tomb, paced forth the judges three. Sorrow it were, and shame to tell, the butcher work that there befell, when they had glided from the cell of sin and misery. An 100 winding steps convey that conclave to the upper day, but ere they breathed the fresher air, they heard the shriekings of despair, and many a stifled groan. With speed their upward way they take, such speed as age and fear can make, and cross themselves for terror's sake, as hurrying, tottering on, even in the vesper's heavenly tone, they seemed to hear a dying groan, and bade the passing knell to toll for welfare of a parting soul. Slow o'er the midnight wave it swung, Northumbrian rocks in answer rung, and Warkworth cell the echoes rolled, his beads the wakeful hermit told. The Bamborough peasant raised his head, but slept ere half a prayer he said. So far was heard the mighty knell, the stag sprang up on Chevois fell, spread his broad nostril to the wind, listed before, aside, behind, then couched him down beside the hind, and quaked among the mountain fern to hear that sound so dull and stern.